Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman. And I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. Now, as I mentioned in my last video, I did get to see a couple movies around Christmas, and I went late on Christmas Eve to check out this one, and I was hoping for something spectacular, and visually, certainly is. But did everything in this movie work? Not quite, and we'll get into it. But, first you gotta pull up a chair, man, and take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in spoiler-free on Welcome to Marwen. That's right, folks. Steve Carell, just the movie juggernaut right now, man. He just seems to be popping up in very well critically acclaimed movies, left and right. And early on, man, seeing the trailers for this movie, I was really, really intrigued, and it seemed like it was a movie that could have a big heart and be really poignant, and really kind of have that emotional pull where I was like, shoot, man, Steve Carell just everywhere is crushing it. And then the reviews for Marwen came in and not as great as I originally thought it might be. So I was very intrigued when I went to go check it out. And look, I like the movie. Like I said, the special effects, it takes a little while. The living dolls are very weird because sometimes they look dollish, but sometimes they look too real. And that definitely messes with your head when you're watching the movie sometimes. But from a visual feat standpoint, it's spectacular. The things they do during these doll sequences, man, Robert Zemeckis, great job. Really, really inventive. Finds a way to insert a little, Back to the Future in there. Pay attention, because if you're a Robert Zemeckis and a Back to the Future fan, it'll certainly make you smile when you see the one thing that's in there. And all of that stuff works really, really well. Zemeckis gets really great performances from his actors. Steve Carell is fantastic. Look, the story of Mark Hogenkamp is so sad and heartbreaking. And Steve Carell really, really plays the character so well. This is a guy who lives through these stories. And Carell really captures, without knowing too much or seeing anything of Hogenkamp personally, it really feels like he captures a guy who just is trying so hard to cling on to something after he's lost everything. And it's a moving performance. By the time we get to the movie's end, Steve Carell is giving it his all so much that a couple tears actually rolled. And I thought that I would be sobbing most of this movie. And it certainly has nothing to do with Steve Carell, because as I said, he's excellent in the movie, as is everybody. But my problems with the movie, I think, kind of land on Zemeckis in the writing approach and the way in which he decided to tell this story. And it robs a little bit from Carell, where I think this movie could have been a lot more impactful, a lot more emotionally attached to the audience, had Zemeckis chose to take a different approach to telling the story. The movie is almost exclusively through the doll scenes, and there's an entire story there that reflects and kind of complements the living story of Mark Hogenkamp, and it works, right? But I didn't think that that's what the movie was gonna be. Like, the movie was gonna really function completely through this lane. And as an audience member, I sat there going, I feel like I'm the person on the outside of an inside joke, right? Like, everybody involved in the movie has way more knowledge than I do of what's going on. And that's why I think the performances work really well in the movie. It's since the movie's come out, Steve Carell's been very public in saying that he's become very close with Mark Hogenkamp, and that when Hoagie saw the movie, so unbelievably moved and was just blown away. I can totally understand that coming from his perspective, especially as the guy who has these thoughts and these, lives all this stuff in his head, to see it on the big screen. I can imagine how emotionally moving that could be. But for someone who doesn't know Mark Hogenkamp's story that well, not telling the whole thing, I think, really hurts this movie. And I'm not trying to spoil anything, but Hogenkamp, is assaulted by like 4 or 5 guys. They kick the crap out of him to the point where he is unconscious, laying in the ground, dying for almost an hour before a bartender notices him. Thought he was a bag of garbage until he moved, and then calls an ambulance. How he survives, who knows? It's one of those kind of incredible stories. And he loses every memory he's had before that night, and is very foggy on that night. So I get that we can't do a ton of backstory on Mark Hogenkamp, because he doesn't remember it. But everything from that moment forward, he does, and that's available. That stuff is known, and it hurts the character development of some of the other characters. The women of Marwen are so important in this movie. I really wanted to get to know all the women of Marwen, and I only get to meet a couple of them because some of them are from Hoagie's direct past right after this happened. So we don't really go back too much. There's a couple flashbacks, but every time we do, very, very short, right? I mean, we see him in the trailer. You see him at physical therapy. That little 5-10 second clip that's in the trailer, the only time we see him in physical therapy the whole movie. Because the movie takes place down the road, where Nicole shows up, a woman who moves in across the street, that's played by Leslie Mann. And you know, I like that story. It's a nice story, but you could have incorporated that story in Mark Hogancamp's full story. And not seeing the relationship that he has with Janelle Monáe's character, who is G.I. Julie in the world of Marwen, it hurts that character because we can never really connect to Janelle Monáe's performance at all because we don't get to live through the stuff that he lived through with her. The same goes for Wendy, the bartender, played by Stephanie Von Feften. She's pretty much exclusively a doll in the movie, but is the person who found, you know, Mark in the ground, and not getting to see what happened with that relationship. You know, there's things that are mentioned and kind of hinted at in the movie, but not seeing that right from the beginning, I just think it cuts so many of the emotional chords that could have tied you into this movie. So the thing that crushes me is by not telling the full story and just showing Mark's entire journey, which could have, and that was the other thing, that could have incorporated the dolls. We still could have had a nice couple stories with the dolls throughout the movie. But like, also, it would have been nice to see how he came up with that idea. You know, we find out that Mark's previous life, he was most likely an artist, but he can barely write his name. So he starts posing the dolls and taking pictures. It would have been wonderful to have seen the creation of that, or how he came up with that to help cope with things. And like I said, just opting to just tell this one story with the dolls, you roll a tear at the end because Steve Carell is just crushing it performance wise. That he gets you because you see it getting to him. But like I said, not having all of that backstory readily accessible or shown to us, the audience, it hurts the emotional tide of the movie. It hurts some of the character development, and it just doesn't hit the emotional beats the way this movie should have. And that's my big problem with it, is that this movie should have been hitting every beat that it tries emotionally, because the story is emotionally moving. Just sitting, thinking, or talking about it can get someone choked up, because what happened to Mark Hogancamp is atrocious. But we don't really get to feel that, and that was really unfortunate, because you rob a lot of really good performances. You know, Elza Gonzalez, who plays Carlala, again, you actually do get to see her a couple times, but that relationship isn't really expanded in a place where Mark worked after being hurt. So her performance is good, but it's lacking because she doesn't have a ton. Gwendolyn Christie, who plays Anna, same thing. Like, we get to see her once in the movie. She pops up, she comes in, and she is like a tornado, man. So much energy and just wonderful, like, personality just exuding everywhere. And then we never see that actual person again. We only see Anna in doll form, and again, that performance gets robbed because you don't really understand the relationship between, you know, Mark and Anna. You know, Roberta, who's played by Merritt Weaver, she gets a little bit more because she's around, but you can tell she's someone that's very important in Mark's life throughout a bunch of the movie. But again, we don't get a lot of their backstory either, so her performance, as good as it is, something's missing, because I can't, you kind of feel for her, but I don't understand their whole story. And then Leslie Mann is wonderful. And the Nicole story, obviously very important to Mark. But her character in relation to how she acts with Mark, and some of the stuff, the way it's written and structured, it's kind of clunky. It's creepy at times. I don't think it's supposed to always like to come off that way. And her story also kind of gets unanswered. Like, something happens, and then you're like, well, wait, now what does that mean? So it's unfortunate, because all of these people do a really, really good job. The visual effects are spectacular, but the approach to the movie, I just didn't like the way in which Robert Zemeckis decided to approach this one, because I think this one should have been really impactful, and this should have been a movie that you went to the movie theaters with a box of tissues and came out without a box of tissues. And it got like 2 tiers because of nobody but Steve Carell. He's tremendous. So Marwen's visually spectacular, and I like that stuff. But dominating the movie that way and not telling Mark Hogancamp's full story, I think hurts it. So those are all my thoughts, man, on Welcome to Marwen. It's disappointing, and even more so disappointing because it kind of takes away from really, really, really wonderful performances from a really, really solid cast. So those are all of my thoughts, man. Now it's your turn. If you have seen Welcome to Marwen, hit those comments down below. Let me know what you're thinking. Did you love the movie? Did you connect with the movie? Or did you think it was kind of flat? Did you like the visual effects? Let me know all of that down below. If you haven't seen the movie, are you enticed? I don't think this is something that you need to see on the big screen to really get the effects and be wowed by the animation. You can watch it on TV. I don't think you need to get to the theater, but let me know if you're intrigued at all or if you're just gonna skip out. Hit, like I said, all those down below in the comments. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give the C-Man thumbs up. I love me some love. And if you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and then hit the little bell so you can get alerts every time I make a new video. Come join the Cinema Sit-Down squad, man, and hang out and talk some movies with the old C-Man. I love getting to interact with all you guys. That's it, man. That's another edition of the C-Man Cinema Sit-Down in the books. So, for the C-Man's Cinema Sit-Down, I'm the C-Man, and I'm signing off. Peace. Well, as I live and breathe, you still here? Check out a video like this one, or this one, and hit the subscribe button so you can get alerts and check out everything the C-Man's got at the Cinema Sit-Down.